Hi, team. I'm Sarah Brown, co host of The Mothers, where we get to know the inner worlds of mothers out there making a dent in the universe and raising the next generation. A friendly reminder to please take a moment to subscribe or review wherever you're listening. It really helps us grow. Today, we're talking to Dr. Kate White, Chief of the Department of OBGYN at Boston Medical Center and the Professor and Chair of the Department of OBGYN at the Boston University School of Medicine. Dr. Kate, as she said we should call her, completed her residency at Baystate Medical Center and her fellowship in family planning at Columbia, where she also received her Master's of Public Health. She is active in multiple research studies in various areas of contraception and abortion. She frequently lectures locally and nationally on a number of topics related to reproductive health. Dr. Kate is also the author of Your Guide to Miscarriage and Pregnancy Loss and Your Sexual Health. And she is a mother of 2, or 2.5, as she jokingly says in our discussion, to include her stepson. For anyone that's been with us from the beginning, you'll recall that I met Dr. Kate when she led a little menopause womp womp discussion hosted by a friend of mine. It was immediately obvious that Dr. Kate is someone we needed to scale. She is determined to destigmatize the taboo, which is rampant in the world of women's health. And that means her being vulnerable about the hardest things, so they can be a little less hard for others. Her point: talk about it, talk about it, talk about it. She also had a challenging journey to motherhood, which she is eager to talk about and talk about and talk about. We do discuss miscarriage in this episode, so please listen with care. Dr. Kate is also someone who has built an exceedingly successful career in a field that has, in my opinion, basically zero flexibility for anyone, but particularly for the uterus-laden among us. The path to becoming a doctor is filled with everything that makes having a child impossible. Endless hours, overnight hours, no sleep, in-person requirements, the uncertainty of where you might live next year, the stress and the stress and the stress of being responsible for other people's lives. It's a hard circumstance to find a partner, let alone create a life. But she did it. And I think you'll really enjoy, be inspired by, and feel connected to her version of how. Because she did it, and she still does it, perfectly, imperfectly, with integrity, compassion, plenty of fight, and with the humility to know that's really the best we can do. So please enjoy our conversation with Dr. Kate.
I listen to a lot of podcasts. I know how it's going to come out.
Yeah, perfect. Really good. Yeah, with you here, it'll be good. Amazing. So we like to start with having our guests offer their version of their story, and how we get to the Dr. Kate of today. I like asking this because, a resume is impressive and amazing, but also loses some of the personality behind it. But I also love asking this alongside the question of what, in retrospect, are kind of the through lines for you, if there were any. And often we try to, we are the stories we tell ourselves, so we can think about it that way. But yeah, I would just love to hear your version of your story.
So I was lucky enough to grow up with a nuclear family with 2 parents who remained married until they passed, which I feel like is really rare and very fortunate. Yeah. I had one brother, very classic American family, and always felt family of 4. Seems like a good size, 2 kids, boy and a girl, perfect. And so I knew I wanted to be partnered and a parent from the time that I was little. It wasn't like my house was full of unicorns and rainbows, Irish father, big temper, Italian mother, lots of guilt. But overall, it was a really great way to grow up. Yeah. And I knew I wanted to be a doctor from the time I was 15. I was that super cool kind of 15-year-old who made pro and con list about things. And when I looked at what would be good about becoming a doctor, in addition to the usual get to help people, get to have this really meaningful career, was I get to marry for love. Because I knew that unlike my parents, who worried about money a lot and tried to hide it from us, but kids are smart and they can still see it, that I wasn't going to have to worry. I could be a doctor, wasn't going to have to worry about money, and it meant that I could fall in love and marry anybody who I wanted. My goal was a high school English teacher because that felt perfect to me. I love
me too.
I like to read. Someone had summers off, would be really good with kids, like that. That was kind of the idea. And then began a decade of education. I joke about when you're in medical training, your 30s or your 20s are like that scene in Apollo 13 where they're coming back to Earth. There's that blackout when you don't know what's happening and all of a sudden you break through the atmosphere. That's what breaking into 30 was like. All of a sudden my 20s were just gone through college, med school, residency, and almost kind of a blur. And that's without taking any time off in between. I was lucky enough to find love and know love a lot in this period, which makes me feel really fortunate, but I didn't find the love and the one until the end of my training, right at the end of my fellowship. And the benefit of finding love at 32 is that both of you know what you want. You've been through a lot of things. In my case, Chad had been married before and had a child. And so you know pretty quickly. And so things progressed fairly quickly at that point into engagement and marriage. And first month off the pill, got pregnant. Like after years of contracepting, looking at that pregnancy test, like, no, this is good. It's now good to see 2 lines. This is what you wanted.
You celebrate, right? We're happy. Yeah.
Right. And as an OBGYN, you know all the things that can go wrong in a pregnancy. And so you hold your breath for quite a while. And then you get past viability. You get past that point that a baby can survive without you. And you think, okay, all is good. Then I had really significant medical complications around 29 weeks of pregnancy, so about 7 months. And I almost died, and we did lose the pregnancy. One of the consequences of that, beyond post-traumatic stress disorder and incredible stress on my relationship, was infertility. And then after the easy pregnancy the first time, then couldn't get pregnant. Needed fertility treatment, but it's just shy of IVF. Got the injectables IUI down to get our son, Zach. And that was our rainbow baby. You know, that was our miracle after all the things we had been through. And as the worrier, observant medical professional that I am, it didn't take very long into his life before I realized that Zach was not like other babies. And I knew that Zach was on the autism spectrum before anyone else did. What that means, though, is that you can be a fierce advocate for your kiddo, and got him early intervention early, got a diagnosis early, which then brings services. You know, parents of kids with issues know that labels are important, because with labels come help. So I always thought the labels out. And then after Zach had a garden variety miscarriage, spontaneous pregnancy, spontaneous loss around 5-6 weeks, and then got Dexter after that spontaneously. So actually without fertility help at all. I have a stepson and my 2 boys, and always had really wanted a daughter, and had talked with my husband about, do we try for another? And he's like, first pregnancy almost killed you. We actually have 2 living, healthy kids. Maybe we're good. And I'd always thought about having 2 to 3 kids. That's the thing about a stepchild, is like that's your or. So I have my 2 to 3 kids.
There you go.
And decided, you know, I'm just going to not tempt fate any longer.
I'm sure it's not an easy choice or decision either.
Not at all.
For anybody who has to figure out, who has a dissent with their partner about, if at all, how many, when to stop trying. Let's not even talk about what the IVF train is like for some people, about how many times do you try, how many losses do you have. Fertility challenges, I think, are one of the biggest things that people with a uterus can go through in their life.
And how old are the kids now?
So Ben, my stepson, who I also refer to as my free gift with purchase, is 28.
Wow.
So I've known him since he was 6, and he's 28 now. Zach is 15 and Dexter is 13.
Wow, in the throes of teenagehood. I'm not ready.
Truly. Me neither. Absolutely not.
Well, when you grow up with a gynecologist mother, there are certain topics that have been discussed. I am all in on talking about, about sex and things. There are other things. Porn, probably like 40% of 12-year-olds have seen hardcore porn.
Wow.
Right?
That's
because it's not that hard to find.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it's so accessible.
It makes sense, right? And so I feel like I was ready for some things about teenagerdom for sure, and then other things. Mr. Beast. I was not prepared for Mr. Beast and other influences on YouTube. And my kids YouTube. I was not prepared for YouTube.
I know. Dr. Kate, I apologize. I worked at YouTube for 12 years, basically. So
you could blame Sarah.
Kids, I always told my kids, I was like, you could not watch YouTube. And they were always like, Mom, when are you going to make YouTube safe for kids? And for all the YouTubers listening, I'm sorry. I was like, it's kind of never going to be safe for you until you're much older, and it's not my problem anymore because it's imperfect. There's so much goodness, but it's inherently by design. It can't be perfect and controlled. So I apologize and I empathize.
It's really funny.
We have this is sort of a I don't know if it's a practical question, but before we get too deep, I was curious about, I at one point wanted to be a doctor. Maybe many sort of type A-ish people were like, of course I'm going to be a doctor. It came to me because I was a big soccer player, blew out my ACL in high school, struggled to find a surgeon. So I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon who was like nice to women and like thought that female athletes mattered, which still would be nice. But I, basically that petered off after I did not do very well in chemistry freshman year in college. But
I never wanted to be a doctor anyway. Seriously,
exactly. Pivoted onto the arts. Yeah. But I'm just fascinated by how anyone navigates the schooling, medical school, the time after. You mentioned you did it quickly and efficiently through your entire 20s, and luckily, came out some maybe unscathed to a degree, found love after the one after. But maybe you could talk a little bit about what it's like to navigate, whether it's your experience or what you've seen around you, even in retrospect now, how people with a uterus navigate that system, how people with a uterus who might want to have kids one day navigate that experience. It seems like this hush hush, like of course these are sort of prime child rearing years. No one has kids in their 20s anymore, sort of on purpose. But it seems like there's this, elephant in the room of like, how do we make this work alongside building a family? Let alone being a mother while you're already, while you're still in training. So I don't know what's the discussion there. What was your experience?
Yeah, there's no ideal path. I didn't wait to be 33, 34 before I got pregnant because I wanted to wait. I didn't meet somebody who, was the perfect match for me until I was done, which allowed me to be really selfish in my training. I'll be honest, in some ways, while it would have been really nice to have a partner to come home to, what it meant was that after a long night, I could come home, eat a bowl of Cheerios, and go to bed. And I didn't have to worry about anyone else's emotional needs but my own. And that is one path and one good thing about not having met Chad during all that. I got to go to the school where I wanted to. I got to match into the residency and fellowship where I wanted to go. It allows you to be selfish when you're flying solo for a while. And selfish, not in a pejorative way. What I see are people who are partnered and starting to have kids in med school and residency. And that, I think, is extraordinarily difficult. They do get to do it without fertility treatment. They get to be younger, more energetic parents. Chad even noticed the difference between having Ben when he was in college and then our kids. He's like, it is a lot harder when you're not 24, to have a little one at home. And so I think I would have preferred to have kids in my 20s if I had had that choice. But I didn't want to parent solo, in the middle of all of that. Yeah. So I think that, and anyone who is trying to combine medicine and motherhood or medicine and parenthood, there are one of a few pathways. There's the marry somebody or partner with someone who will be at home and manage a lot of the childcare, or marry another professional where you can afford to have a nanny, or be lucky enough to have healthy parents or siblings who can then help out with childcare, especially when the kiddos are little. Yeah. Okay? I was not lucky enough to have healthy parents and a sibling who was too far. And while Chad was not a high school English teacher, he was a journalist when I met him, which was really close.
Oh my gosh, very close.
Manifested that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And how I knew Chad was the right one was we were driving to a wedding on the Cape. We had been dating maybe 6 weeks, and we got into a conversation about parenting styles because, of course, he was already a parent, so he was in the thick of this. And he talked about how he thought that if economic circumstances allowed, that a parent should stay home with the kid to not outsource child rearing early. Now, I had had 2 long-term relationships with people I dearly loved, and when they realized that I wasn't going to stay home with the kids. Note to self and to all the women I ever come in contact with, if you want to be a working parent, marry someone whose mother worked. when you have someone
gotta
whose mother
unpack
did
that
not,
one. Yes.
right? Mother didn't work. They are always, no matter how much they think they want an equal partner, they want somebody who's going to stay home.
Yeah.
And so I was like, let me stop you right there. I have not been in school since I was 6 years old to give it up when I had kids. I'm an OBGYN and maybe I will go part-time, which means 40 hours a week. So I had this whole rant about how I worked so hard to become a doctor and I'm not going to give it up when I have kids. And so he just let me vent. And then he said, how much do you make? Ooh, big question for 6 weeks into the relationship.
Truly.
So I told him, and he said, okay, here's how much I make, which was a third of what I made. And he said,
Good for you.
if anyone would stay home. So he said, if anyone would stay home, it's me.
Oh.
And I thought, okay, I can marry him.
Yes. Welcome to the
That's
21st century.
amazing.
That's fantastic. Go, Chad.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so that, like, I think everyone, like, I have girlfriends in medicine who, when they would go to bars, would lie about their profession. They would say they work in a hospital because being a female physician is a litmus test for future partners, because it means that you are just as smart as they are, make as much or more. And there are a lot of people who identify as men who cannot handle that. I waited for someone who is so proud of what I do, who is the kind of person who at a party says, this is my wife, she's a doctor.
Yeah.
Right?
Celebrates
and
it.
That's what all of us deserve, no matter what we're doing, right?
Yes,
you deserve a partner who celebrates you. But in medicine, that can be particularly hard to find. So I found someone who was actually working full time, but from home. I joke that, Chad was part of the Zoom generation before the pandemic, before it was cool.
Yeah.
And his decision to work remotely meant that we could go anywhere and that I could be on call whenever I needed to, that when the kids have a sick day, he could be there. His decisions have made my career possible. And so it's not the only path. I know plenty of like 2 physician couples, physician lawyer couples who have an amazing nanny who makes their house work. But I married someone, who had different career aspirations and wasn't making in the 6 figures. And so, and without healthy parents on either side of the equation, option 3 he said, well, it's important to me. So of course I'll stay home. Which seems so logical in retrospect, but at the time seemed revolutionary.
Yes.
Totally. And
I think
still
it's also,
is like, it's so non-traditional, even though it should not be, right? Of this like almost like gender role swap. It's sad that there's stigmas and stereotypes that make us feel like like for you to even think like, well, I'm not staying home, to auto default to that is just like,
right.
Yeah. Because you're not surrounded by it. You don't see it that much or talk about it. So,
and it was so important that my kids saw not just me working, but me pursuing a real career that required a lot of time that I really love, making a difference in the world. And some years ago, I was talking to Zach at bedtime. He was probably maybe 10. And we were talking about what you want to be when you grow up. And he said, I want to be a daddy. And I want to stay home with the kids. I was like, like there's like
we're doing it.
Victory moments, right? Of like, I don't know if he'll have kids. I don't know if he'll stay home, but we were modeling for him that this was normal. And it feels like one of the biggest things we could do when we're raising boys.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. Seeing also your Chad support you and seeing like, oh, it's important to support and question and challenge and grow each other, right? And that like he saw it within you, like this is my passion, this is what I'm doing, and this is how I can support you. That's like the greatest gift that you can give. Yeah. It's amazing.
How was your mother as a role model? You talk about marrying someone whose mother worked. I'm curious what your mother looked like on that spectrum.
My mother and I were really close. My parents got married at 22. She had me at 24, my brother at 27, which was really typical in the 70s, right? To have kids in your early. My mother actually thought that she was going to die an old maid because she wasn't married at 19, 20, and so she jokes how her aspirations for me when she had a daughter were that I would grow up to be either a teacher, a nurse, or a flight attendant, because that was the height of what she could picture for her daughter.
So interesting. Yeah.
My parents both went to college when married with children. My father went to college first, associate's degree, and then bachelor's. And then after he finished, he made my mom go because he knew that she would not be happy without this. So my childhood was a parent in college at like throughout the whole thing. My mother typing papers on the manual typewriter in our kitchen. And so my parents modeled for me really young that you can work really hard and long hours and still love your family and be with them, even if it's not quantity, but the quality can be really high. And the importance of supporting each other, you know. And so I think I got my work ethic from both of my parents. And so there were a lot of things my mom modeled really well. She went then to work full time when I was in middle school. I came home from 8th grade, which was the first day of school that she wasn't there. But I was really happy for her that she was, you know, where she was. And so she got to be home with us early, and then she worked later, and she was totally a happier person. She wasn't unhappy home with us, but she just had this whole other life when she had this whole other identity that wasn't just mom and wife. But my mom was still also of her generation where her kids were the center of her world. I mean, almost until the day she died, if I was flying somewhere, she would want me to text her when I landed. Like she was always very engaged, and how we were doing, the two of us, was her whole world. And I felt incredibly loved, but sometimes a little suffocating. And I think you always learn how to parent from your own parents, right? You pick the things that you like, and then the things of the, I'm never going to do it that way. Some of which you don't, and some of which you find yourself doing anyway, but you're like, oh,
I said I wouldn't do that.
And then here I am doing it.
Totally.
So I feel like I had like as good models for parenting as anyone. In terms of like what I want to take from that and what I don't.
So you brought up, and you are reflecting it already in how you're describing everything. But on this topic of identity, one thing I noticed immediately in the Glamour magazine piece that you wrote, and talking about this, the stillbirth, unfortunately. And in that, you talk about how being a doctor is more than what I do for a living. It's really a part of my identity. And how could it not be? I mean, there's so much time that's invested. You're carrying lives. Like you need to be fully invested. I'm curious how introducing mother as another identity, how there was space for that, how those lived alongside the physician identity. Curious also a little bit of how that evolved through your experience with Samantha and then now with the other older kids. If you could talk a little about that, I would love to hear.
Yeah, I think I will always introduce myself as a doctor, wife, and mother in that order, because that's just the order I got the identities. If I just kept like adding on like a train car.
Very analytical.
Right. And I think I worked the longest to become a doctor, right? Like not kidding. From the time I was 6 to the time I was 32 was in training for the job I have now. But mother is by far the hardest thing that I have ever done. And that's with medical training before the work hour restrictions, where we were working 90 to 100 hours a week. I mean, sometimes 36 on, 12 off. I mean, it was crazy and inhumane and not really good for patient care. And I still say that parenting is the hardest job that I've ever had. But I also think that being a doctor and going through medical training trains you really well to be a parent. I used to be the heaviest sleeper. I mean, slept through my alarm in college more times than I slept through an exam in medical school because I was a really deep, long sleeper. And medical training really cures you of that. I showed up for my first night call with an alarm clock. And my senior resident said, "What's that?" I said, "Well, you know, I'm a heavy sleeper." And he just laughed. He's like,
"Don't worry about it.
Promise you're not going to need it," because like I wasn't going to see my bed the entire night. And so that idea of being able to wake up really quickly and function well on no sleep. So even throughout our whole relationship, I'm the person who gets up at night with the kids when someone's vomiting, when someone has a fever, because I'm the person who can function on little sleep, being woken up a lot. And now, of course, I'm perimenopausal, so I'm waking up for other reasons at night. But with the parenting part, like that takes you right through, like sleepless nights with the baby, no problem. I've been there, done that. And so I think some of it actually helps. Like being a doctor actually helps being a parent.
So I could fill in the gaps, but for when you say mothering, being a parent is the hardest, what comes to mind? Or where is that rooted in?
All right. So throughout all of schooling, it is almost a linear relationship between how much you study, how much you give up, and what you accomplish. right? I always joke that anyone in a profession like this has a PhD in deferred gratification, right? You are used to sacrificing things for the next thing that comes. You don't go to the parties, you study for the test, you take the MCATs as many times as you need to, you do all these things, and then you accomplish. Put work in, you get output out. Not every scholarship, you don't get into every school you apply to, but you know you're going to accomplish, right? If you want to be a doctor and you work hard enough, you will eventually get there. And so at 32, I had this relationship with work in general of I'm going to work really hard at things and then I'm going to get the thing that I want.
Yeah.
Anybody who has started down the fertility road from the trying to get pregnant and not being able to if people have losses, which 1 in 3 women will have who are trying for pregnancy are going to have a miscarriage, at least one. And then you get the kid you get. And I felt like I was prepared for a lot of things about parenthood and then fully unprepared for others. And no matter how hard I work, it does not guarantee any kind of outcome. No matter how many books you read on sleep training or toilet training, right? Kids are on the path they're on. Can I use profanity on your podcast?
Absolutely. We encourage it.
Yeah. So nature kicks nurture's ass. Every day of the week, right? I'm not saying that nurturing is not important, but these little beings come into the world, they are fully formed humans. You don't know what the form is yet. And it has taken me years to come to grips with the fact that I can't will into existence certain things. And after years of getting that other kind of reinforcement of the harder you work, the more you accomplish, the more you succeed. Now it's like, good luck. Let's just see. That was really hard to actually unlearn.
Sure. Yeah. Did being there, that sort of implies this, but did being, you mentioned identity, mother sort of being at the last because of how when those came into your life, but was being a good mother part of that expectation for yourself, which might relate to this linear wish, a desire for a linear relationship of if I do all the things and we play classical music all the time, like I'll control the outcome and I'll be great.
Sarah, I wasn't supposed to be a good mother. I was supposed to be a great mother, right?
The best mother, actually.
The best mother, right?
Yeah.
And I think having a special needs child, so Zach is on the autism spectrum, has ADHD and major depression, which are commonly clustered together. I think you actually learn real early that you're not necessarily going to get all the things that you want. And that idea of good enough parenting is really important. And so I honestly incorporated that into my soul earlier than I think other people do, because when you have a child who doesn't smile, who doesn't want to communicate, like there's always milestones not being met, like you kind of figure out early, okay, like I need to sort of adjust expectations here.
Sure.
But even within the world of adjusted expectations, I have never felt like such a failure being a parent because of taking way too much on me. And it is something that I will still struggle with to this day about what I can control and what I can't. Nothing has made me doubt myself like parenthood. And it's not like medical training or medical practice was easy. It's not like I didn't have really hard moments there where I didn't know if being a doctor was the right thing, was I doing right by my patients. But those moments, fortunately, were few and far between. And you're surrounded by an incredibly supportive community who know exactly what to do when someone has a bad outcome with a patient to make sure that you feel supported and that you know that doing the best thing you can still doesn't always mean the best outcome for someone. So I felt super supported at work. Mothering, though, you are all by yourself. When Dexter decides at 4.5 months he doesn't want to breastfeed anymore and just stops in the middle of one night and that's it and never goes back, it does not matter how many lactation consultants I come up with, how much I pump. I could have breastfed triplets. I had so much supply and I had 2 kids who had no interest in nursing. Right? So I felt like such a failure because so much of it I felt was under my control for so long. And to say nothing about like the pregnancy loss, I ruptured an aneurysm. It is something that you are born with that often, if you have one, ruptures in pregnancy. And the mortality rate for moms and babies is really high. It is a minor miracle that even I survived. That's not how I interpreted it. I thought I couldn't keep my daughter safe. The one job you have as a parent and I couldn't keep her safe.
Mm.
So I think the same kinds of tendencies that make a person driven towards all that sacrifice in college, towards all those years of schooling, also often makes you really hard on yourself as a parent. And some people may get easy kids. I think it's still hard for them anyway. But then you get kids who have needs that you're not necessarily prepared to deal with.
Sure.
And it's really challenging.
Yeah. Did those circumstances, in all of the guests that we speak with, there's always been, there's sort of who they were before and who they were after introducing a child, or even like getting close to being a parent. And in that process, there's often there's some form of clarity that comes, like sort of a spiritual clarity and certainly not on night 2 and maybe not month 6, but sort of over time, there's some sort of deepening that happens with somehow being, honored to be responsible for another human. Although you're a doctor, so you do that every day, but that is your own. Did that, I imagine within that, adding on layers of hardship, how did that sort of knock around your other senses of identity? Like, I could imagine it would be understandable if you were like, this doctor stuff, I know how to do this. I can be great here. And then kind of turning away a little bit from being all in at home, and in a totally understandable way. I mean, we're all growing and grappling with a lot. I'm curious if that is something that has been an experience of yours. Maybe it's constantly a daily experience of yours. I don't know.
I often joke, and like most jokes, there's a lot of truth under it, that I didn't get pregnant to have babies or little kids. I wanted to become a parent to have relationships with my adult kids. I had great relationships with my parents, and kids are adults much longer than their actual children.
Sure.
Even though I knew I wanted to be a parent, I was never a huge baby person. I was reflecting, thinking about the podcast, that when I finally got a dollhouse, I turned it into a college dorm. I didn't want to be a house because I really wanted to go to college. I really wanted to get out of the town I was in. I was always at a young age thinking about that. So I was never really, I didn't play house. I wasn't really engaged in that. I didn't have a lot of dolls. That wasn't part of like my identity early. I just knew I wanted a family, half Irish, half Italian, a lot of cousins on both sides, big holidays. And even if I didn't want my nuclear family to be that big, family has always been incredibly important to me. And having kids and getting to teach what you know to another generation, care for people outside yourself, leave a piece of yourself in the world, always felt really important. And I wasn't around a lot of little kids growing up. And so I had some trepidation going into parenthood. I wasn't worried about changing diapers or about the actual caretaking, but it's about the chaos that these little monsters bring into your life and about what that is like. And I was grateful that I had a partner who had already gone through it once, which was super helpful, that both of us weren't completely new at it. But I don't think I was prepared just for how hard childhood is on you and on you with your partner. Right? Like all the patients I've had through the years are like, oh, my partner and I were having some difficulties. We really want to get pregnant. This is just going to exacerbate and shine a light on.
Don't do that.
Right. No, bad move right now. And so I think it has been very easy for me to retreat to work. Which is where I do feel functional and capable and not doubted nearly as much. I don't doubt myself. Other people don't doubt me. Certainly no one is yelling in my face how much they hate me and what a bad job I'm doing as kids love. No problem. Right. And so it is really easy to just say, I'm going to, stay a little late. I'm going to work a little bit more at home because I am a doctor. I'm doing big, important things that are impacting people's lives. And so it's super easy to self-justify trying to retreat from the really hard stuff with kids.
Do you show up as a mother when you're at work? Like, how much is that part of your existence? And obviously, in the OB space, like sort of maybe useful context. I don't know. But
absolutely.
How much are you a mother at work?
Like, I'm an OBGYN. We are talking about these issues all the time, right? Like we talk about breastfeeding. We will talk about C-section scars. We'll talk about, postpartum weight loss, and we'll talk about parenting, like, because we're also doing it with our patients, not because we want to make an encounter about us, but in that way of identifying,
humanizing it. And I've been there. I know what I'm talking on.
It'd be like the sleeplessness, right?
Yeah.
No one can explain to you the sleeplessness of those like first 3 to 6 months. And for patients who don't want to get help, like, and they're just zombies when they come in, that I can share how much I know and how important it is to just let him give a bottle, or let your mom come for a week, or whatever it is, for you to be able to get a little bit of rest. And so I feel like you tap into those shared experiences, especially the hard ones. And I run a miscarriage clinic now. You know, it's one of those ways that, because I feel like when I had my losses, even being a doctor, even being able to access the best of healthcare, I still didn't get what I needed. And so I have sessions with people after the loss is over, when they're really now coming to grips with like, what the fuck just happened here, to be able to validate for them what a big deal this is, how it wasn't their fault, about how going forward, even if they get pregnant again really quickly, it doesn't turn off the sadness from this loss. So being able to like take those experiences as a parent, including as a parent of pregnancies I lost, I think does make me a better doctor at work. And as colleagues, we all talk very openly about the challenges that we've gone through. So I feel incredibly fortunate to be in that kind of workplace, especially with the challenges I'm going through now.
Yeah. Is there like practical sort of support? This is true for mothers, but for any parent, but the medical profession sort of can only be so flexible, I imagine. But how is that? And I come from tech, so which used to maybe be a good thing, but it's trying to be a flexible, like you do the work you need to do, as long as you get it done, do it how you need to do it. Medicine doesn't really have that luxury. I'm curious if that's how you run up against those. It's like a gravity problem. Like it kind of is what it is, and how parents, for your case as a mother, how you navigate that.
I think the profession's come a long way, even in the 20 plus years I've been in it.
Oh, great.
I took 8 weeks maternity leave for both of my kids. Both were C-sections, and it was 8 weeks. And that
I could not imagine.
And that felt like a luxury, because a lot of people were taking 4 or 6.
Wow.
And now no one takes less than 3. A lot of people will tap into the 6 months that you can get in our amazing state. And we allow on-ramps more. My on-ramp was I had 1 week of working 3 days before I was back full-time. That's not a ramp. That's just a slight bump.
Right.
And so I really encourage people in my right. And now I encourage people to like come back 3 days a week for a while. Or start with 2 and then 3, as gradually as you can, to use that leave, not all at once, but to be able to make it easier to kind of figure out what the new reality looks like. So we're better about leave policies, I think, than we used to be. And the pandemic made us realize how much can actually be remote. I strongly encourage people in my department to take at least a day a week from home telemedicine, because that means that you can be around for all the morning chaos. If you're pumping, you've got your own fridge right there. We've got lactation rooms all over the place. That's good. But just to be able to be physically home, to only have to, tabletop dress and you're in sweats underneath it, it really can make a huge difference. So we try as much as we can, right? We're never going to be tech. We're never going to be journalism or marketing or other fields, but we are really trying as much as possible for flexibility with families.
Yeah.
That's so great.
I was also curious, given your profession and your patient base, there's obviously no singular answer to how are the mothers doing, but I'm curious from what you see, one of the reasons that there are many reasons we wanted to start this podcast, but something that added urgency to it was a lot of the discussion, was happening before this, but the Surgeon General's warning that, becoming a parent is actually, dangerous for your health. And a lot of people being like, I don't even want to have kids. And I'm not here to say everyone should have kids at all. But I am curious, and we can debate how helpful that Surgeon General's warning was, but what's your sense? What are mothers struggling with? How are they doing? Are they not struggling? Maybe we're assuming something.
Oh God, no, everyone's struggling.
Yeah.
The world is on fire and we're all just doing our best right now.
Right. I'm a big fan of the B- philosophy, right? B- work, B-, it's sort of the equivalent of good enough parenting.
Good enough. Yes, totally.
As for people who have been like A+ drivers their whole life.
Sure.
Like B-, it's really, it's plenty.
Yeah.
I think that the mothers that I see struggling are the same core struggles that people have been struggling with for generations. And what's interesting is that it's both the physicians I work with and the patients at our safety net hospital who are very often struggling with the same things, which is lack of good childcare, lack of good support in terms of the functioning of the household, right? If you don't have a nanny, about the unexpected days off, the freaking half days in the calendar all the time, even once the kids are in school, right? And disagreements with partners about who's going to do what, right? Like, and so like none of this is new, but it continues to be a problem, and people react to it in really different ways. It is true, more people than ever before are really clearly saying that they are never going to become a parent, not in some kind of angry way, not in a reaction to the current administration, just it is too hard. I don't have the resources. It's not the path I'm on. My two closest girlfriends I have two close girlfriends who are childless by choice, and the two close ones I have who have become parents each have one. So like in our circle, I'm the breeder. It's two kids and a stepson. Like I'm the one who looks crazy fertile. Because they're like one and done. Like one just, they hit the jackpot with their first kid. They're like, why have another? Even though growing up, there were like no only children. Two was the smallest family I knew. And now one is becoming much more normal. And even for couples who want more, I know multiple women who are not having any more kids beyond whatever number they're at. They want to have more, but they don't know how to make it work. And that is what happens when you don't have a village around you. Like most of us have moved away from our families of origin because you chase your training, the better schools, the programs you match into, and you don't always land in a place where you have a community. I'm probably going to date myself, but there was this show called Big Love on HBO years ago, like the Secret Mormon family with Bill Paxton, and like the three households all like shared a common backyard. And I'll tell you, a lot of us watched that show like, oh, see that would make it work. We could actually have a lot of kids because there's like three of us to share, like forget about him, but like three moms to divide and conquer between.
Totally.
And it feels like we are still in the same models we have been for generations of every family is on their own. If you are lucky, you have healthy parents or siblings who can help. If you are really well resourced, you have a nanny. And if you don't have either of those things, good luck.
Yeah. Well, part of the good luck, and I thank you for being honest about it. I think that is true. One thing that is also a theme among some of our guests is this idea of, I think there's some rebellion in even having these conversations publicly, but I think there's also additional rebellion in questioning the system and kind of questioning what we've been served, whether that's, rising up the ranks in capitalist America, but also what capitalist America wants you to think of as success and what what achievement looks like and what having the right family looks like. And I've found that of the folks that seem the least conflicted, everyone is struggling, as you said. But some are able to, and you alluded to this as well with Chad. We love Chad. That you've done it. You've managed to kind of huddle within your own family unit and say, here's what matters to us. Like, here's what's going to make us feel successful. No, it almost maybe moves beyond the word success. But here's what our values are. Here's what's important to me. Here's what's important to me or in the way that we live out our dreams or we sacrifice for each other or whatever. How have you been able, you seem like someone who maybe is just, confident to do that, but I'm curious practically, like how you were able to do that with your family, with your partner, with your kids, or maybe if that is what you've kind of done. Cause I think it's very hard, because America wants you to want more and more and a bigger house and more kids and whatever. How do you define your own worth, essentially?
I think it's really helpful to have people, like have your partner and whoever family members you're close to that you can genuinely talk honestly about what the things are that matter, because that you can serve as a check on each other about what is realistic and like just what is possible. So so we live in the Boston area. Chad's parents used to live in Seattle. And as they were aging, we actually helped to move them to Massachusetts to have them closer when they got sick. They have both since passed. And it was excellent to have them closer. My parents were in New Jersey, in the same town I grew up in. And that's a, roughly 6-hour drive. And for a long time, we really tried to go once a month to visit them, to drive down. And, driving with kids, I would take photographs of what the minivan looked like for a 2-day trip to New Jersey. Like,
oh
how
my God,
much?
yes.
Like they're moving
House
states,
on wheels.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Or like fleeing an apocalypse of some sort, right? And I would always cry every time we left because it never felt like enough. And Chad would be like, he's like, we can try to go more, but like even the one weekend a month, especially with little kids, is a lot. And so it's like recognition that it's not great. Do I wish we lived closer? Yes. But like life is really good in these places we're living. I don't want to move back home. And so it's enough. Just that trying to accept when something is enough.
Yes.
I think sometimes it takes a long time to get there.
Yes.
And I think having a kid on the autism spectrum also very rapidly knocked us off of that so easy to be on conveyor belt of where are kids going to school? What are they doing? What are their activities? What kind of college are they going to get into? We left New York City with Zach when he was 4 months old, partially because first of all, we wanted a house that was actually a house and not an apartment. But we had 2 friends whose 4-year-old children were interviewing for preschool.
Yeah.
We'll let that sit there for a minute. Because if you don't get into my preschool, you don't get into my kindergarten. I was like, oh, no. I recognize how important being self-driven was, and you cannot impose that on anyone else. And we just did not need to be around that.
Yeah.
And I think then having a child with any kind of challenges makes you realize you may have kids that don't go to college. You may have kids that don't leave the house at 18, and that's going to be okay. And so early, I felt like we didn't have to compete. That was actually a real gift because Dexter is incredibly self-driven. He is my kid who checks his grades on the Aspen portal, and if he's got a 95 average this block, he wants to have a 96 next block. Like that's probably me. That's my fault. I'm sorry. Right. We're not driving him towards it, but like it's all innate. But like being able to step outside and say like, this is the path he's on. And I don't care. I don't care what he does, as long as he is being true to himself and doing something because it makes him happy. I think that is really grounding, actually, like the release of expectations. And that is actually a gift that Zach's diagnoses have given us because it actually really lets us have clarity, right, about what is really important here. It's not all of those traditional markers of success.
Yes.
Yeah.
This kind of leads nicely into our last question, and then I'll have a few little rapid fiery things. And you may have kind of answered it already, but we do like to ask about this idea of having it all and whether that's something you think about, what it all would be in your world. But yeah, what do you think of having it all? Should we? Does anyone?
I don't think any women can escape thinking about this and what your relationship is with that concept right, of having it all. When I was in residency training, there was this doctor in our department who seemed to have it all. Great marriage. She's a fantastic OBGYN and this great kid. And we're like, Dr. X, how do you do it? And all the women like gathered around like the campfire. And she was the first person, I've heard this from other places, but she was the first person in my life who said, you absolutely can have it all, but you cannot have it all at once.
Yes.
And the goal of having it all does not mean that at every given point in time, everything is perfect and maximized and balanced. Having it all means like being 85 and looking back on your life. And did you get to do all the things you wanted to do and have the experiences you wanted? And so at an impressionable age, in my late 20s, of her redefining what have it all means was one of the best pieces of wisdom I've ever received, because now that's exactly what it means to me. And Lord knows, I don't feel like things are in balance at any given moment. But even just doing like a pulse check, like when I turned 50 a few years ago, it's like this really good big moment for reflection about like, okay, I have the kids I wanted. I am still married to my first husband, which feels like a huge victory. I'm in the line of work I want to be in. Like check. Then you zoom in a little bit and it's a hot mess and things are on fire. But like but it's that zooming out of the big things that matter to you. Are you doing them? Are you on path, on track to do them? That's what have it all means. I want 30 years from now to look back. That's when I'm going to say, I did have it all. It doesn't mean at any given moment. There are only 168 hours in the week.
Yeah. Yes.
All doctors
Totally.
know.
Totally. I totally, absolutely agree. And I do think that there's the world right now is, do I immediately feel good of what's going on? And I think motherhood and everything you're saying really is reinforcing this idea that we need to take a longer term view. Let's, make things a little bit easier if we can in the short term, but life is long. Okay. With a few minutes left, some short answer, quick questions. If you could go back and tell your new mom self one thing, what would it be?
That it is not going to be like you thought it was going to be. That is not your fault. Like, let go. I cannot tell you how much this book is doing for me right now. I'm holding up Mel Robbins' Let Them. This is distilling all the things that I have thought I was trying to do and but encapsulating it into one easy.
That's what I meant to say.
Let them. Yeah. Maybe this dovetails nicely with the next question, but the idea of going back, and if there's something that could have made the journey of motherhood a little bit easier for you or for your family, is there something that comes to mind?
God, healthy parents who could have watched my kids without charging me an hourly rate. Like Chad and I did not take a vacation alone, the two of us, for 14 years because we had spent one night away from our kids. But when you are paying your babysitter essentially by the hour, it means being away for a while. And it wasn't until Ben got to be old enough that he volunteered to watch his brothers that we could even go away at all. We did other things like the one thing that's been really good for us is we have done date night every week. For almost 2 decades now. During the pandemic, it meant just taking food in. Feed the kids first. They go watch probably YouTube, and then we have dinner.
Mr. Beast.
Right, to be honest. But that like constant checking in, but like being able to really get away might have been nice.
Yes.
I love that.
All right, and finally, your kids may be listening, or one day they will. Is there anything you'd like to say to them?
That I know I am not always around all the time, but that you need to know that you made my life complete. And I really mean that.
Yeah. And goes back to what you said in the very beginning, which is that I want to do role modeling working is really important for them to see. So well, thank you for sharing all of this with us. You can hear V's small child. He wants to participate also in this.
We're working on sleep training.
That was a long nap for him. But thank you so much.
Thank you for giving us space, because I think breaking through the shellac, that exterior of everything is shiny and perfect is really important, because it's so easy to feel alone as a parent until you realize that so many people are feeling exactly like the way you're feeling.
Yes.
100%.
Yes, and we need each other, and it's okay to not feel excellent all the time. Maybe when we're 80, we'll look back and feel good.
Right.
Good. I feel like that was the first interview that felt like really someone that we didn't really know.
Yep.
Going into it, which was great.
Yeah.
But I feel like others, there's some personal connection. This was like, you showed up at this talk. I thought you were cool. Will you come talk to us? Remember me?
Yeah.
But I thought she was great. And she's the kind of OB-GYN that I would like to have. Like there's a beautiful, but truly like the beautiful article that she wrote a while ago now in Glamour about the
2010.
Yeah. About this stillbirth experience. And in that, a lot of what she talks about, what she mentioned on the podcast too, was that she was always a worrier.
Yeah. I loved that line that she wrote, something like, in my baby book, it says my first words were dada, but my first sentence was probably like, I'm worried. What did it say? Something
or something like that. Yeah. It's interesting to be a worrier, but then her job is to make other people not worry.
I know.
Which is kind of in the high level cliche thing of those who can't do teach. I feel like in some ways that sort of sits in this, like, if I have a hard time, the people that are have spent the most time trying to help themselves not worry are probably the best at helping other people not worry.
Because you understand, like you've been there. I also think there's something about being able to do it for other people if you can't do it for yourself. I remember in the early days when I started working for you, when I was like, your oldest would like cry. And I was like, it's okay. He's fine when you leave. This is fine, whatever. Even if I was like, I don't really know, but I'm going to make Sarah feel like it's going to be totally fine and we'll just figure it out. And also similar to like what you were just saying, she is the kind of doctor that I think I needed like in my pregnancy and delivery of just like being real about stuff.
Your
and
whole
not,
experience
like,
would have been different.
Totally. Instead of just like fake, like this isn't going to hurt or this is going to stop or you're going to feel this. I want like people appreciate and want to hear the real thing of like, this is less than ideal or this is uncomfortable or this is whatever. And you will be okay. This is how we're going to get to the other side. Here's our plan of action. I think that approach is so empowering. And so for her to be able to say like, look what I've been through and like, here I am, and this is how we'll get you there.
Totally.
That's her patients are lucky to have that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah. I also think it's funny. I mean, her role modeling and how important it was. I think the reality. The doctor world is one that I will never fully understand. Truly. I will watch Grey's Anatomy and various medical dramas, but it seems like an impossible proposition. As much as I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon, and I feel like that would have been fun. But the piece that she mentioned about both how important it was to find someone that wasn't essentially intimidated by, or I guess as she said, it wasn't intimidated, but find someone who respects and is excited about you being a doctor and doesn't somehow make some assumptions that because you're a doctor, and I don't know if that person would necessarily connect the dots of this is why, but it seemed like her experience was maybe it made her a less attractive partner to many because she was a doctor and maybe less likely to flex down on her career and care for the kids. It's so funny because coming out of Newton/New England, it's like everyone should be a doctor. Like that's the most impressive. It'd almost be like an attractive thing of like, wow. And maybe this is just my head. Be like, wow, it makes you attractive to be high achieving and capable and all these things. But clearly I wasn't in medical school and I didn't live this experience, so I don't really know. But I was glad that she talked about that truthfully and the honesty of how she's like, I'm like actually similar to other folks that we've interviewed. Thankful to them for saying, yeah, actually my husband, in this case, it's all hetero couples so far, but my husband's going to stay home.
Yep.
Or my husband is like, is with the kids full time.
It's true.
And I do think those are stories. I'm interested how many times when we stumble upon those in this podcast journey, because I think they deserve more awareness too. I think all we've talked about, all childcare sources, experts like deserve to be acknowledged and known both for their sake and for everyone's sake to know like, this is how this is happening. So I was glad that she shared that story as well.
Yeah. Go Chad.
Yeah. I know. Go Chad. What a progressive dude. From Seattle.
Love it.
So low key. Yeah. What else? I mean, also like navigating a lot of different kids' circumstances.
Different needs.
There's such like a resilience that she's carrying with her. So much grief.
All while not sleeping. Both from parenting and being a doctor.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And I find that in the medical profession, how hard it is to probably integrate like a human emotion feeling to it, because so much bad stuff happens all the time. Why open yourself up to that? But yeah, she forges ahead. Very strong.
We appreciate you, Dr. White.
I know. Cool. Well, if one day I ever experience some form of menopause, which obviously would never happen.
You won't. I think you're not going to, right? You're not going to.
Yeah, I'm opting out.
No, thanks. Not interested. Moving on.
Yes, exactly. I'll just wake up one morning and it'll be done. Cool. All right. Do we have some joy among us?
Where's your joy at? Do you have an answer?
This is within a series of life events that are not normal. There's like a season of a lot of travel. This I'm most excited about, but also I feel like such a dick after Dr. White was like, I haven't been away from my kids. My husband and I weren't alone. I didn't go out alone except for a date night. They never went on a trip alone for 14 years.
I know. Dang.
There should actually be, okay, if
That's
people
wild.
are listening.
14 years is so long.
What's the, Make-A-Wish Foundation. This is not like the same.
Sarah?
There should be like a stork, like just a miracle gift. Because that is true. Like, obviously everyone should have the miracle gift of consistent childcare that does not drain their bank accounts and keeps everyone happy and alive. There should also be some sort of like magic gift of like, in the way that they have these like TV shows where they're like, surprise, we're renovating your home.
Extreme makeover home edition.
Extreme vacation. Like
extreme weekend.
Have someone wonderful.
Mom and Dad's night off.
That's sponsored by a community, by a fan. Like it's like Kickstarter for couples or parents where it's like,
I volunteer as
the
first recipient.
Yeah, you should. That's what I mean. Like, honestly, if someone like this, I keep thinking I should do this. I want to figure out how to do it for you. So be surprised when it happens.
If
but
someone who's not
someone
me
just
wants
shows
to go
up.
watch Fee's baby.
Yeah, exactly. But if someone who shows up and is immediately great, who you're like, of course I would trust you, and is paid for. And it's like potentially they've already purchased like your travel.
Sure.
Would you cry?
I don't even know what I would do. I'd be like, what do you mean?
Does this not exist? This should exist.
I love it. This is an extension. It's part of Backline Media.
Exactly. Okay, anyway, so with that context, music is important to us. Music like helps me escape real life and like taps into emotions that make me feel alive. So we're going
back to Berkeley for school, baby.
Yeah, exactly. I'm really leaning into my artist era. I hate using era now. Okay, we're going to a music festival in Jackson Hole. We've been trying to get you to come on this.
I was gonna say, wait, this sounds so familiar.
Is also the one.
What is it called again?
It's Rendezvous Fest. It's like these. Is indie the right term?
Yeah.
Like how would you cat it? Like Head in the Heart, Avid Brothers.
Are you serious? Okay, so where is my Make-A-Wish?
I know, shit. Now we have to really do. Who can we pay? You should just come.
Have 3 days.
Jason's parents are watching our kids, so you should just
drop him off.
Casually drop. What's one more?
Hey,
okay, think about
it. Breastfeed?
True.
Can you do this?
If they'll find a way, they'll find a way.
True. Oh my God.
Okay, just think about it. So anyway, that's my joy is that I will get to escape and hear music. And this is outdoors.
This for you.
This is like all great things at once.
Oh,
yay.
How long are you gone for? Just the weekend?
I leave very early Friday and come back
tough.
Very late Sunday. There's the travels. There's no good flight situation, but you make that part of the experience.
It's you love long travel days. So
I love long travel. We need to have a separate segment on this.
That'll be on our one-on-one
fiascos.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll bring this up. I'll just remember. Just without any context, nobody leave your bag on the plane. Like when you leave the plane, get your luggage
about that component.
from
Sarah.
the overhead compartment. Anyway,
you gotta get new outfits for your trip.
I do have to go shopping, but I'm trying not to go shopping because I don't want to waste the money if it's all going to come back. But
true.
Anyway, where's your joy, V?
Okay, 2 things. The first is that seemingly we had a concern about having mold in our walls from a leak from the shower in our rental. And seemingly it's just creaky wood because of the pipes touching the old framing of the house and not mold.
Wait, the leak
and not a leak. Apparently it's
even though it's moist. Is that the word we use? Do you see water damage?
No, but we hear it. We hear a leak, but they said the guy came and he said, "You're in the clear. That's just creaky wood." And I said, "Okay." So my joy is, I guess, that we don't have to worry about that. I'm 70% believing him.
Yeah. Okay.
He was like, "Oh, that's the pipes," and I was like,
"Was there evidence of mold, or you were just assuming there? If it's
we've just
because
been
it's a
having
leak, there must be mold,
sinus head things, like, and my partner's been getting sick way more than ever before. So we were like,
he's in Boston, not in LA.
True. True.
Or it's mold.
So that's a good thing, I guess. And then my other one is that I feel like my nameless son is like about to crawl, which is exciting. And so it's just been like really fun to watch him learn his body. And it's just like really sweet and cute. And like, you know, when they're like wobbly giraffes.
Totally. And they like stick their butt up in the air.
Yeah, it's the sweetest
and they like
thing.
do the
He's so
forward and
happy about
backward
it.
motions.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just really sweet. So that's also been like super joyful and just like sweet. So
have you managed to stop worrying about milestones and being like, everyone else is crawling? Why isn't my son crawling?
And no. I feel like I had a fleeting moment the other day where I FaceTimed with some friends, and one of them has a son who's like 2 months older, and one is maybe like 6 weeks younger. And he's kind of like army crawling. And I was like, what the hell? Why is your baby crawling? I was like, when did that happen? But I'm also like, not in a rush and just enjoying everything for what it is. And like,
totally.
Clearly fine. So I'm not worried about it. But there is this weird competition feeling that I get where I'm just like, wait, what? He is too.
Well,
even though,
exactly.
It's hard.
It's hard to feel. There are going to always be differences. It's hard to just notice the difference without it having any meaning attached.
Totally.
It's like an active exercise.
Yes. That's a thing. And there's also such a wide range of like what is expected. So it's like, it's all okay. So we're good. We're good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
By the time we're 80, we'll realize that it's
none
all
of this
good.
matters. Truly. None of this matters.
Oh, it's true. Life is so long and so short and so forever and so never ending. And I don't know, all the things all at once.
That's so true.
Well, cool. Well, we did it. We locked it up. We got a doctor. We snagged a doctor. Look at us.
We're the coolest.
Yeah.
She's the coolest.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Kate.
Yeah.
Maybe one day, I'll go back and become a doctor.
Yeah,
you should. So cool.
Because
also you're a doctor. Once you're a doctor, you're like always a doctor. Like
it doesn't go away.
You have
even
that
if you're not practicing.
qualification. I don't know.
That's true.
I'm just over here making up my profession every day.
Girl, same.
I need like a plaque on the wall. It's like, no. Some large institution said that I could do this. So
Sarah, we are breaking this mentality for you.
That's right.
No, you don't need a plaque.
I don't need anyone. I am my own woman.
Start sobbing.
I'm good enough.
You're doing great, and you are good enough.
Oh my God, we are.
Not just good enough.
We all are.
You're doing great. You're good.
Totally. We're B- great. Yeah.
Sarah, no.
I'm just kidding. No, it would be real progress if I just embraced the B- life. And I think we're working on it. That's fine. Who the fuck cares?
Who
I'm grading
cares?
myself
And I
anyway.
mean it.
Totally.
No one hates me as much as I hate me. I'm doing it.
I did think so. I've heard this on many other podcasts or many other like anyone that's created something out in the world. They're like, honestly, there's nothing you could say to me that I haven't already said to myself. You can't hate me
100%.
any more than I will hate what's happening, which I actually do generally feel that way. There's no level of doubt or fear or unknown that you will throw at me that I'll be like, oh, well, for that reason.
Haven't thought about that. I love it.
Well, Godspeed on the crawling. And
thanks, girl. Godspeed on your flight.
Oh my gosh, I know. I'll come back singing. Well, you'll be there because there'll be some surprise stork at your doors.
Let me know when I need to be downstairs.
Yeah, I'll let you know when you should drop off your kid.
I'll welcome
on the way.
I'll kiss them on the lips. Warning.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us. Please remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode and we can reach even more rock stars like you. The Mothers is a production of Backline Media, shining a light on those who carry the team.